Hey guys, tonight we're diving nose first into something a little ripe. You're going to spend a full day in the sandals of a Roman dung collector. A real, gritty job in the heart of ancient Rome. The kind of job that doesn't get glorified in marble or whispered about in scrolls. It's dark, it's smelly, and yes, it was absolutely essential to keeping the empire functioning. From the moment your bare feet hit the floor of your cramped apartment, you'll be immersed in the surprisingly intricate world of ancient waste management. You'll walk Rome's winding streets with a bucket, a stick, and a strong stomach. You'll dodge judgmental stares, gossip with fellow collectors, and maybe, just maybe, earn enough denarii to afford some halfway decent olives tonight. Of course, you probably won't survive this job. It's smelly, thankless, and the public perception hovers somewhere between necessary evil and walking warning sign. But hey, someone's got to do it. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're settling in, drop a comment with your location and the current time where you are. I love seeing where you all listen from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your day begins long before the sun has even considered waking up. Rome still sleeps, cloaked in a hush of late night and the damp scent of early morning fog. You rise from your straw-stuffed mattress with a groan that might be mistaken for a dying donkey, your joints clicking like a poorly tuned lyre. Your insula, the rickety multi-family apartment block you call home, creaks around you. A baby cries somewhere down the hall. A cat yowls up on the third floor, probably fighting a rat the size of a helmet. You move quietly, not out of politeness, but because it's too early to deal with your upstairs neighbor, Lucia, the unofficial neighborhood crier, who will want to talk about her dreams again. You dress in layers of rough-spun wool and grab your satchel. Inside, a stale roll, a slice of last week's cheese, and half a fig that's probably seen better days. You tie on your sandals, fraying at the edges, crusted with yesterday's labor, and hoist your bucket. It's wooden, it leaks a little, and it's going to be your closest companion for the next 12 hours. There's also your paddle, flat, chipped, but perfectly suited for scooping things you never want to think about. You sling your water skin over your shoulder. It's already half empty. Rome may be a city of aqueducts, but you're not exactly top priority for fresh refills. Outside, the city exhales a deep, sleepy breath. The air smells faintly of smoke, olives, and something else less pleasant wafting from the street drains. You take a moment to scratch behind your ear and mentally prepare yourself. Not everyone can stomach what you're about to do. There's an odd pride in that. As you step into the alleyway, your sandals slap against the cobblestones. You dodge the morning puddle, best not to ask where it came from, and set off toward your first collection spot. The city is mostly empty now. A few bakers are lighting ovens. A courier jogs past with a scroll tucked under his arm, bleary-eyed and muttering Latin that's definitely not from Cicero. You pass a statue of the emperor and give it the nod. You're not sure which emperor anymore. They change faster than tavern prices. But a nod feels polite. The marble man stares down at you, serene, unbothered, and most importantly, clean. As you trudge through the forum's edge, a low clatter startles a flock of pigeons into the air. You barely flinch. You've seen worse. Much worse. Like that one time in July when someone poured chamber pot contents directly onto your head from the third story during lunch. Still, you carry on, because Rome, for all its splendor, its aqueducts, its libraries, its senators in gleaming togas, still depends on people like you, dung collectors, stercorarii, the unglamorous gears in the great machine. Historians still argue whether dung collection was officially city-sanctioned or just a tolerated freelance gig, but you know the truth. When the toilets overflow, even the most pompous patrician will pay up. You pause briefly under a flickering oil lamp, one of the few still burning from the night watch. The flame dances above you, casting shadows that stretch and curl along the walls like ancient graffiti. You breathe in, out. The day hasn't truly begun yet, but your nose already knows what's coming, and so does your stomach. It lurches a bit as you recall your last client from yesterday, a fishmonger with digestion issues and no boundaries. one foot in front of the other. That's how you do it. That's how you always do it. And so, under the waning stars, with your bucket sloshing softly and your paddle gently knocking against your thigh, you begin the long, fragrant march into the belly of the eternal city. You don't really eat breakfast, not in the way philosophers or noblemen do, with figs lovingly peeled and bread soaked in honey. No, your first meal of the day is more of a practical pause, squeezed in beside the public latrine near the baker's district, because you're already headed that way. And frankly, the smell doesn't bother you anymore. If anything, it's oddly grounding, like your body's way of confirming, yes, we are alive, and yes, that is human waste. You crouch beside a stone bench half slick with morning dew, unwrapping your sad little parcel of bread and hardened cheese. The roll has the density of a small weapon, and you half consider throwing it at the rats darting under the latrine's foundation stones. But no, food is food. You dunk it in water from your skin, watch it absorb like a sponge, and pretend the chewiness is a feature, not a flaw. As you gnaw, the first trickle of early risers makes their way to the communal toilets. Roman public latrines are surprisingly social spaces. Long marble benches with keyhole-shaped cutouts, no partitions, and all the awkward eye contact you could ever wish for. You get nods from a few regulars, most of them barely awake, robes crooked, mumbling curses about lentils. One of them, Gaius, the street philosopher who talks more than he bathes, settles beside you and picks his teeth with a chicken bone. Rough shift yesterday? He asks, gesturing toward your stained tunic. You glance down and shrug. Could have been worse. At least no one vomited directly into the bucket. He grunts appreciatively and offers you half a fig he probably found somewhere deeply unwise. You decline politely. You've learned. He taps his temple. You know, there's a rumor going around. Emperor Domitian might be reinstating a dung tax. You roll your eyes. Again, Vespasian's spirit lives on, friend, he says, solemnly. Pecunia non olet. Ah, yes, the famous phrase. Money doesn't stink. Vespasian introduced a urine tax decades ago, collecting fees from those who profited off waste, particularly tanners and launderers. It's the kind of policy that makes you feel seen, and not necessarily in a good way. Historians still argue whether Vespasian's tax was widely enforced or mostly symbolic. But on the street, you know what matters. Someone will always find a way to make money off your job. You're just trying to make it to lunch without losing a sandal. Another collector shuffles by. Marcus, a wiry older man with a limp and a temper like a kick mule. He pauses to light a clay oil lamp, then tosses you a nod. First bathhouse already hit? He asks. On my way. Watch out. Pipes are backed up. Smells like Saturn's armpit in there. You chuckle. And how would you know what Saturn smells like? He snorts. Don't need to know. Smelled enough senators. He limps off, muttering about kids these days and their inefficient scooping techniques. You finish your breakfast, such as it is, and wipe your hands on your tunic. Pointless, but habitual. A light breeze carries the scent of fresh bread from the bakery up the street, taunting you with the reminder that not all smells are created equal. A mule clops past, hauling a cart of amphora, its hooves clacking rhythmically on the stones. You nod in appreciation. Well-groomed animal, shiny coat, probably belongs to a perfumer. You make a mental note to check their latrines later. Wealthy clients always mean lighter loads and heavier coin. You hoist your bucket again, the wooden handle creaking faintly. It's lighter now, but by evening it'll be sloshing and sticky, just like yesterday, and the day before, and the day before that. Your paddle, affectionately named Pliny, because like the elder Pliny, it's seen a lot and smells vaguely of sulfur, knocks softly against your side as you start walking. You're headed toward the bathhouses, one of your most reliable sources. You pass a group of young apprentices loitering near a wine shop, one of whom wrinkles his nose theatrically and calls out, "Careful, the pool man's loose again." You offer him a lazy wave. Your mum's my best client. Laughter erupts from the others, and the boy turns red enough to match the wine jars behind him. You grin and keep walking. You've learned. Own the job, or the job owns you. There's a strange dignity to what you do. Rome runs on its waste just as much as it does on oil, grain, or gossip. Tanners need urine. Fullers, those people who clean togas with clay and ammonia, rely on your deliveries. Dyers soak wool in chemicals that would make a goat faint. You're the star of that chain. Still, it's not lost on you how people treat you. Some stare like you're contagious. Others won't even speak to you directly. One woman once threw coins at you from a balcony. Like you were a street dog, she half-pitted. It used to sting. Now, it's just part of the rhythm. As the light shifts from gray to gold and the streets begin to fill, you pick up your pace. The bathhouses will be opening soon, and if you don't get there before the steamers start dumping the pools, you'll have to fight for the good sludge. It's a strange world where timing means the difference between useful waste and too much water. You round a corner, the sun finally peeking over the terracotta roofs, and feel the familiar pinch of a day beginning in earnest. Your stomach gurgles, not hunger this time, just nerves. The first scoop of the day is always the worst. And yet, you keep walking, because Rome isn't going to clean itself. Your first real task begins not with a splash, but a scrape. You arrive at the baths just as the attendants begin their morning rituals. Clattering bronze tools, pouring hot water into already warm pools, and yelling half-hearted insults at each other across rising clouds of steam. The sun hasn't fully stretched yet, but the caldarium, Rome's hot room, is already breathing heavily with heat and humidity. You squint against the haze, trying not to imagine what's stewing in the drainage pits below. You head toward the rear, where a side grate in the floor collects runoff from the pools and latrines alike. Steam curls upward as you lift the heavy wooden cover with a grunt, revealing a dark, sloshing void below. It's an olfactory slap to the face. Urine, sweat, oils, feces, and the faint, desperate perfume of cheap lavender. Today's cocktail. You kneel, bracing your knees on the slick tile, and plunge your paddle into the stew. It hits bottom with a soft, wet thwunk. You stir once, twice, then scoop upward and into your bucket, letting it settle with a glorp that would terrify a less seasoned stomach. Watch the splatter this time, calls an attendant from the hypo-cost vents. Last week you got in my sandals. You don't bother turning around. Don't wear your good shoes to the filth grate, then. He grumbles something about dung boys with smart mouths, but you hear the amusement tucked beneath it. Truth is, most of the bathhouse staff tolerate you well enough. They know the system. You clean out the pipes and collection pits, and they get to pretend their marble floors are self-cleaning. Historians still argue whether these bathhouse runoff systems were truly efficient or just symbolic efforts at hygiene. You have first-hand evidence. It depends entirely on whether Flavius, the bathhouse manager, remembered to bribe the aqueduct workers this month. When the water slows, the filth builds. You haul up another load, this time thicker, full of last night's soap, oils, stray hair, and what you sincerely hope is not a fishbone. Into the bucket it goes, and the smell intensifies. You exhale through your mouth and mutter a prayer to Cloacina, the Roman goddess of sewers. No one worships her much anymore, but in your line of work, she's the closest thing to a patron saint. Nearby, a youth in a toga too clean to be trusted whispers something to his friend while pointing at you. You catch a word or two, lower class bucket, and one word that rhymes with trout. You give them a smile so sweet it might curdle wine. One day, you say aloud, not even looking at them, you'll slip on a bathhouse floor and land face first in a pile I personally scooped. And I won't say a word. Just let it happen. They scurry off. Small victories. The bathhouse isn't just a collection site. It's a whole social ecosystem. Senators sit beside bakers. Soldiers beside poets. And below them, always below, is you. Digging, scraping, collecting what they leave behind. In more ways than one. You move to the next grate. This one near the latrine entrance. Here, the waste is less diluted. You brace yourself and scoop. It's heavier now. Warmer. Steam rises from the bucket's rim, fogging your face. Just as you're about to move on, someone clears their throat behind you. You turn to find a bathhouse servant, arms crossed, looking sheepish. We had a situation in the women's changing area. You nod. No need for details. Just directions. You follow her past a mosaic of Neptune taming sea creatures. Somehow, that always feels ironic, and into a side corridor where the air is thicker, more pungent. Behind a partition, you find the source, a small overturned pot, evidence a hasty exit, and a mess that looks like it lost an argument with gravity. You exhale. "Give me 5 minutes," you say, kneeling again. Your job isn't glamorous. It isn't even pleasant, but it is necessary. Rome doesn't function without waste collectors. Not really. People think the empire is marble and aqueducts and triumphal arches. But those arches, they stay white because people like you make sure the streets below them don't turn into rivers of excrement. Once you finish scooping, you toss in a handful of lime powder, meant to cut the stench, though it mostly just adds a citrus tang to the horror. Still, it helps. A little. You pass by the servants' area on the way out and exchange nods with a few regulars. One hands you a half-eaten pastry. You accept with a grin, wiping your hand on your tunic before biting in. Poppy seed and figure a rare treat. "Don't say I never give you anything," she teases. "Never doubted you for a second," you say with your mouth full. As you leave the bathhouse, your bucket sloshes at your side. It's half full now, heavier, warmer, more fragrant. You've only just begun. Your mule, rented from a stable near the cattle market, stands tied to a post outside. He flicks an ear in greeting and snorts, unimpressed with the smell. You pat his flank. "I don't like it either," you mutter. You load the bucket into the cart and tug the reins. The mule groans but starts walking. Your next stop is a tannery, and they're picky about freshness. The day is warming up, and so is your cargo. The mule trots at a reluctant pace, hooves clacking a steady rhythm as you make your way through the narrow, winding back lanes of Rome. The streets are coming alive now. Fruit vendors yelling out early prices, kids chasing each other with sticks that will inevitably become weapons, and housewives shouting instructions to servants with a sort of vocal projection that would put a general to shame. You head toward one of the city's public bathhouses, this one near the Aventine Hill. With a reputation for being a little seedier, but a lot more generous with their materials. You've scooped here before, once even found a gold ring tangled in a clump of filth. You cleaned it, sold it, and treated yourself to half a duck and a pair of nearly new sandals. Good week. As you roll up, you notice steam already hissing from the tiled roof vents. Attendants rush in and out, arms full of towels and sponges, barefoot, damp, swearing under their breath. You park your mule in the alley and grab your bucket and paddle. Pliny's paddle, faithful and always vaguely sticky, and step inside. Bathhouses are noisy places. Water gurgles down pipes. Sandals slap against wet floors, and voices bounce off the high vaulted ceilings. Men shout greetings, argue about politics, and belch like it's a competitive sport. The air is thick with steam, oil, sweat, and the slightly alarming smell of last night's garlic stew, now seeping out of pores in tactical waves. You've got your spots memorized. First, the strigling area, where bathers scrape their skin with curved metal tools, leaving behind delightful little piles of dead skin, dirt, and oil. You crouch by the drain and scoop methodically, grateful that this early in the day, it hasn't yet turned into full-on skin soup. Next up, the latrine zone. Less glamorous, more chunky. The latrines at this bathhouse are older. Marble benches, yes, but cracked and chipped, with water slowly trickling through the trench below. The water is supposed to carry everything away, but does a lot of heavy lifting in this city. Rome is mighty, but the gods forgot to make a maintenance department. You kneel beside the outlet grate, muscles already aching a bit from the first haul. You've developed a technique. Slide the paddle in at an angle, tilt the wrist, and scoop with a flick. It's efficient, and it minimizes splashback, a survival skill you can't believe they don't teach in philosophy schools. As you work, a figure steps over you delicately, a bathhouse patron in a robe, so white it hurts your eyes. He sneers slightly, still shoveling Rome's blessings, I see. You glance up, recognize him. Lucius something or other, failed senator, proud son of man who bribed his way into office and out of taxes. You offer him a pleasant smile. And you're still spilling Rome's blessings, sir. Circle of life. He snorts, but you catch the flicker of a grin before he turns on his heel. You'll take it. Back in the side room, you notice a curious little thing. A small bronze figurine tucked into the corner near the drain. You fish it out with the tip of your paddle. A tiny depiction of Mercury, god of messengers and merchants. Possibly dropped by a superstitious bather or a nervous thief. You pocket it. Might fetch a denarius or two. Or at least bring you better luck than last week, when a dog mistook your collection cart for a snack stand. You dump another paddle's worth into the bucket. The stench rises. You breathe through it. Historians still argue whether dung collectors were considered legally essential or merely tolerated by the city's administrators. You know one thing for sure. When the latrine's back up, people remember your name real fast. You swing the bucket out the door, sloshing carefully so as not to lose any of your precious cargo. What's gross to most is gold to others. The tanneries pay by weight, and moisture adds weight. You learned that trick from old Septimus, who once patted his buckets with river mud until a dyer caught him and chased him down an alley with a broken amphora. Your mule snorts as you return, perhaps offended by your lingering aroma. You pat his flank and mutter, "We've both smelled worse." The cart creaks as you lift the bucket onto its platform. It's nearly full now, and heavier than it looks, dense with the morning's labor, with oil, with bile, and with the secrets of 100 sweaty bathers. You tie it down, just in case a sharp bump tries to spill your earnings. That happened once. One cobblestone too high, and your profits flew across a spice vendor's stall like a horrible, squelching omen. You're still not welcome on that street. As you set off toward the next collection site, a group of girls in clean tunics passes by, giggling and holding rosemary sprigs to their noses. One of them points to your cart and whispers something to the others. You catch the word ferment. You smile politely and keep walking. Ferment has value, after all, especially to Rome's lower industries. Dyes, leather, and even certain medicines all require what you provide. It's chemistry. Sort of. As you cross under a vine-covered archway, you find yourself reflecting on your work. The city celebrates its soldiers, its poets, its builders. But how many remember that all their efforts would come to nothing if the streets flooded with filth? You keep Rome walkable, smellable, livable. No one cheers when you pass. No statues get carved. But without you, the forums will be knee-deep in uncollected contributions within a week. The day stretches ahead, and your cart grows heavier with each stop. Your arms ache and your feet protest. But there's pride in rhythm. Scoop, carry, dump. Scoop, carry, dump. Like a heartbeat no one wants to talk about, but everyone depends on. And now it's time for the guild meetup. A bunch of other dung collectors gather near the tanneries, griping about routes and rates, and that one guy who keeps undercutting everyone by 3 denarii. Time to talk shop, and maybe score a better dumping contract. The mule knows where you're going before you do. He veers left at the cracked pillar near the Forum Boreum, Rome's oldest cattle market, and plods dutifully down a street that smells like history, hose, and fermented goat. You let him lead. It's not like you're in a rush to get to the Dung Collectors Guild. Not because you don't like your fellow filth-flingers, but because meetings with them have a tendency to spiral into full-blown arguments about who's hoarding the good latrine routes and who shorted whom on last week's tanner delivery. It's like the Senate. If the senators were barefoot and smelled like latrine biscuits. Still, this is how the system works. You find them gathered behind an old temple, shaded by a sagging awning tied with ropes that have clearly given up on life. The group huddles around a chipped marble bench, some sitting, others squatting, a few puffing lazily on rolled leaves that smell vaguely of burnt oregano. The usual suspects. There's Felix, with his extravagant mustache and a voice like he gargled with gravel. He's mid-rant about the tannery at Trastevere. They docked me a full denarius because they said my load was too thin, he complains, waving his paddle like a centurion standard. Too thin. I told him, it's not soup, it's artisanal. Crispus, the quiet one with the missing thumb, just shrugs. You shouldn't be skimming off the top, then... Felix narrows his eyes. That's slander. Crispus smiles and picks something from his teeth, entirely unfazed. You settle onto an overturned amphora and nod at Tullia, one of the few women in the guild, and by far the best negotiator. She once convinced a senator's steward to triple her pay for collecting only from high-born dung. Still no one sure what that means. You're late, she says, not unkindly. Had a spill near the Aventine. You reply, guy tried to pay me in boiled turnips. Again, they're not even seasoned. Laughter ripples through the group. It's grimy, weary laughter, the kind of humor you develop when your entire job involves carrying buckets of other people's digestive decisions. You pull out your skin and offer it around. Felix declines, paranoia about backwash, but Toya takes a sip and passes it on. There's a rhythm to these meetings, like a bizarre dance. Complain, brag, warn, trade tips repeat. Someone brings up the latest news from the forum. Apparently, a new contractor is offering to collect dung faster, cleaner, and with better smelling mules. The group groans in unison. Crispus mutters, probably uses river water to pad the load. Felix snorts, or pays off the tanners with cheap wine. You sigh, guild politics. They matter. You may be bottom rung in Rome's grand social ladder, but even dung collectors have lines they don't want others cutting. Historians still argue whether these informal guilds had official recognition or operated more like neighborhood mafias. From your perspective, it's a little of both. You watch out for each other until someone messes with your turf. A newcomer ambles over, young, barely out of boyhood, wearing a tunic too clean and sandals too nice. He clears his throat. Hi, I, heard you all are the, Stercorarii? Felix eyes him like a hawk might eye a particularly arrogant pigeon. You here for work, or lost on your way to a poetry reading? The boy gulps. Work. Honest work. I heard there's coin in it. Toya crosses her arms. You ever carried a bucket heavier than your mother's wine jug? Sure, he says quickly, then adds, well, not a full jug. Pass, Crispus mutters. Next. But you look at the kid and see a sliver of your younger self. Ambitious, desperate, not yet broken in by the smells. You speak up. Let him try a day's run. If he's still standing by sunset, we teach him the difference between a piss pit and a leather bath. There's a beat of silence. Toya nods. Fair. Felix shrugs. If he throws up on my cart, I'm charging him extra. The boy, eyes wide, nods enthusiastically. I won't. I swear. You almost feel bad. Almost. You move on to more pressing matters. Supply chains. Specifically, how the price of lime powder has jumped thanks to a warehouse fire. Without lime, you can't mask the worst smells, and even the least sensitive tannery won't buy from you if your bucket fumes knock them flat. Toya suggests a workaround. Use vinegar and crushed mint. Not as strong, but keeps the flies off. You jot it down mentally. Another trick for the toolkit. The meeting wraps with shared groan as the sun climbs higher. One by one, the collectors disperse, heading off to their routes with their carts creaking and their paddles swaying like sad flags of necessity. You linger for a moment with Toya. How long you been doing this? She asks. You think, since the fire at the bakery put my brother out of work. 5 years, give or take. She nods. You're good at it. That's rare. You laugh. Rare is one word. Unfortunate is another. She grins and walks off. Whistling, you turn back to your mule, who's managed to knock over a basket of dried olives and is chewing with zero shame. Guess that's lunch, you mutter, pulling the cart forward. The midday sun is beating down now, and your next few stops will be messier, hotter, and more creatively odorous. But you've got a full cart, a few new tricks, and somehow a half-decent mood. Not bad for someone whose job description starts with scoops excrement and ends with don't ask too many questions. By midday, the heat is inescapable. Rome has no mercy for the laborers who work under her sun. The stone buildings radiate warmth like ancient bread ovens, and every surface you touch seems to hiss in protest. Your tunic clings to your skin, damp with sweat and other, less nameable substances, and your mule, loyal but increasingly judgmental, has slowed to a resentful trudge. You wipe your brow with a cloth that hasn't been properly cleaned since Caligula's reign, and sigh. The air is thick with dust and cooking smoke, but it's the underlying, ever-present odor waste that wraps around you like a musty old blanket. It's always there, in your nostrils, your clothes, Your pores. You're not entirely sure you even smell it anymore, but you can see how others do, especially the people who cross the street when they see your cart coming. You pause in a sliver of shade between two tall insuli, letting your mule drink from a cracked basin while you sit on an overturned crate. A fig vendor eyes you suspiciously from across the street, probably afraid you'll lower the tone of his fruit. Too late, friend. There's already a pigeon nesting in your scales. You fish out a few scraps of bread from your satchel and chew slowly. Each bite is dry, and the heat makes it stick to the roof of your mouth. You chase it with a swig of warm water that tastes vaguely of beeswax and regret. Across the street, a little girl tugs on her mother's robe and points at your cart. The mother pulls her away like you're contagious. Is that the pool man, Mama? Don't point. You offer a wave and your best deadpan smile. Collects it, not makes it. You mutter to yourself. Big difference. You've been at this job long enough to know that most Romans would rather pretend waste doesn't exist. They like their world ordered, marble temples, flowing fountains, polished sandals. But behind every spotless forum is someone like you, scraping away the parts of society no one wants to look at. And it's not just latrines. There's dung in the gutters, runoff from slaughterhouses, even mysterious brown puddles in alleyways that could belong to any 12 creatures, human included. You've developed a sort of sixth sense for identifying the source of a stain. It's not something you brag about, but it's real. Today, your route has taken you past several blocks of workshops, metal workers, glass blowers, leather stretchers, all who make polite noises about the stench when you pass, as though they don't produce plenty of their own. You nod, keep your eyes down, and let the mule do the navigating. You stop briefly at a side street where an amphor maker always leaves a few scraps of shade and a clay cup of barley water. You sit, drink, and stare at the slowly ripening pile in your cart. It has layers now. Strata, really, a historian might one day find this fascinating. A cross-section of urban Roman life, they'd say, while holding their noses. Historians still argue whether waste was routinely used to map out urban demographics, whether richer districts had cleaner refuse, or if the poorest areas were simply more efficient at discarding. You could tell them, the rich are messier than they look, and they tip terribly. A passing actor, half in costume, stops and eyes your cart with theatrical revulsion. By Jupiter's nose, he mutters, that smells like politics. You give him a slow blink. Could be, might have scooped from a senator's villa this morning. He gags dramatically and staggers off, presumably to insult a toga somewhere. You finish your drink and pour a little over your arms, letting it cool your skin in rivulets. The relief is brief, but you take what you can get. After all, this job isn't just physically grimy. It's mentally exhausting. You carry the weight of the city's filth, and with it, the invisible social burden of being untouchable. But someone has to do it. And today, that someone is you. You swing back into the street, guiding the mule toward your next stop, a tenement block with a communal toilet known for two things, bad plumbing and very talkative residents. You brace yourself. The latrine is at the far end of a shaded courtyard, surrounded by faded frescoes and laundry lines. A woman is already waiting there, arms crossed, toe tapping. About time, she says. It's backing up again. Pleasure as always, Julia. You reply, setting down your bucket. She leans in slightly, lowering her voice. You know who used it last? Should I? Publius, the butcher's apprentice. Stayed in there for 20 minutes. You raise an eyebrow. Impressive. I'll check for souvenirs. She snorts and disappears into a doorway, calling back over her shoulder. Leave some lime this time. You get to work. The pit here is poorly built, too shallow, with a drain that connects to nowhere. You scoop carefully, try not to damage the stones. The waste is fresher than you'd like, still steaming in the shaded light. You hum under your breath, mostly to drown out the squelch. As you scoop, a neighbor leans out a window and tosses you a plum. It bounces off your shoulder and rolls into the dirt. Missed, he says cheerfully. Not the worst thing that's hit me today. You call back. He laughs and disappears. You finish your task, dump a few scoops of mint-laced ash into the pit, and move on. Your bucket is nearly at capacity now. The cart creaks under the weight as the mule pulls it back into the street. The heat continues its slow chokehold, but you're numb to it now, covered in sweat, grime, and the invisible but unmistakable aroma of civic necessity. You pass a tavern and catch a whiff of lamb stew. Your stomach growls, confused and hopeful, but there's no time. Not yet. Your next client is a senator, a rich one, with marble commodes and slaves who look down on everyone. Even a man who literally removes their waste. You sigh. Time to deal with rich people's poop. Again, you can always tell when you're approaching one of those villas. The street suddenly gets cleaner. The paving stones are less cracked. There's even the faintest trace of perfume in the air, like the bricks themselves have been soaked in rose water. The mule perks up too, though you're not sure if it's the scent or the promise of a shaded courtyard and a handful of spoiled fruit from the kitchen slaves. The senator's estate is perched smugly on a slope near the Palatine Hill, with high stone walls, elegant mosaic tiles in the threshold, and a marble statue of Minerva that you're fairly certain costs more than your entire neighborhood. You tug on the bell cord at the gate, then wait, trying not to drip on anything too pristine. Eventually, a house servant appears, dressed in fine linen and an expression of deep resignation. He doesn't speak, just looks you up and down like you're a very animated stain, and then gestures for you to follow. Inside the gates, the courtyard smells of citrus trees and wealth. Shade dapples the travertine tiles. Somewhere, a lyre plays softly. Birds chirp. It's very peaceful. Until you remember that your cargo could clear the atrium in 3 seconds if the cart hit a pothole. You're led around the back to the latrine wing, where another servant, this one even more annoyed, gestures to the commode room. You nod, mutter a thank you that absolutely no one acknowledges, and get to work. Rich people have fancy ways, not in content. Everyone's inside betray them eventually, but in presentation. This latrine is lined with marble. There's a little alcove with a bronze oil lamp, and next to the seat, a basket of imported sponges soaking in vinegar water. The sponge on a stick system. Rome's reusable toilet paper. You grimace. This one's been soaking since last week. A voice says behind you. You jump slightly. The speaker is a girl, maybe 12, dressed in a neat tunic and holding a tray of honey cakes. You nod to the sponge. Well, it's certainly aged. She giggles. Papa says that one for guests he doesn't like. You laugh before you catch yourself, then go back to work, scooping delicately. The waste here is strangely clumpy. Probably all the honey dates and peacock eggs these people eat. You do your best not to chip the marble. It's hard to explain that kind of damage on your invoice. As you fill your smaller bucket from the commode pit, a servant approaches and pinches his nose. You know, the senator doesn't like the smell near the triclinium, he says, gesturing vaguely toward the dining room. You need to hurry. You give him a blank stare. If he doesn't want to smell it, maybe he shouldn't be full of it. He glares. You smile. It's your version of diplomacy. Historians still argue whether elite Romans truly believed their bodily functions were less offensive than those of the lower classes, or they simply demanded that the process be invisible. You're leaning toward delusional denial. Once the smaller bucket is full, you carry it back to the cart and carefully pour it into your larger haul, taking extra care not to spill anything on the senator's gravel path. These people have guards who will chase you down for a robe droplet. The girl with the honey cakes follows you. Do you ever get used to the smell? She asks, wrinkling her nose and not eating her cake. You consider this. No, you say, but you learn to ignore it faster than other people do. She tilts her head. Do you like your job? You think again. I like that it pays. I like that Rome doesn't collapse because of me. She nods solemnly, as if you've said something profound. Then, quite suddenly, she holds out one of the cakes. For the road, she says. You hesitate. It's sweet, probably safe, and definitely the most generous thing you've been offered in days. You take it with a nod and a quiet thanks. Don't tell the cook, she whispers, then darts back inside like a fugitive. You finish up, double-check the load, and nod to the mule, who hasn't moved but does seem vaguely more smug than usual. One of the guards opens a gate for you without a word, eyes fixed forward like you don't exist. Outside the villa, the city returns to its usual texture. Gritty, unpredictable, pungent. You munch the honey cake as you walk, savoring each bite. It's crumbly and sticky, and you try not to think about the last thing your hands touched. Your next stop is a dyer's shop near the Tiber, which means navigating a maze of alleys and stairs while praying your cartwheels don't fall off again. Last time, you lost a full load in front of a barbershop, and the resulting chaos ended in 3 arrests and a ruined wig. Still, the dyers are good clients. They don't mind the smell. In fact, they need it. Your collection, especially the fresher bits, is prized with ammonia content, which sets dye in fabrics. They call it mordant, which sounds fancy but translates to urine by design. As you walk, you pass a shrine to Mercury. You toss in a fig stem and whisper a lazy blessing. Keep my cart upright, and the tanner's honest. You take the long route through a quieter alley, where a stray dog dozes in the sun. A bread seller calls out a discount for day-old loaves. You consider it, but your coin is earmarked for lime powder. The honey cake makes for a rare indulgence. You savor the last bite and wipe your hands on the side of the cart. The day's only halfway done, and already your back aches. Your clothes are stiff with grime, and the bucket threatens mutiny. But now comes the part where you turn all of this mess, this stink, this haul, into money. Poop for profit. The Roman dream. The tannery stinks worse than you. That's saying something. Given that you're currently hauling a cart brimming with Roman society's least celebrated output. But the second you turn the corner and catch that first whiff, sharp, sour, and strangely meaty, you know you've arrived. The mule balks, stopping short as though even he has standards. Come on, you drama queen, you mutter, tugging the reins. The tannery squats on the edge of the Tiber like a drunken octopus. Low buildings sprawling out in all directions, with open pits filled with hides, dyes, and various questionable concoctions bubbling in the heat. Workers bustle about. Sleeves roll high, calves splatter with things best left unnamed. One man is elbow deep in a vat of something purple and frothy, humming off key. You roll your cart toward the rear, where deliveries are accepted. A familiar voice greets you. Well, the scoop slinger returns. It's Faustus, the foreman, broad-shouldered, hair like straw, and always chewing on a stick of something that crackles like it might still be alive. Got a good mix for you today, you say, patting the side of your cart like a prized racehorse. Fresh from a senator's villa. Premium blend. He raises an eyebrow. No olive pits this time. Only a few. He grunts, waving you forward. We'll see. You position the cart over one of the empty collection troughs and begin the delicate process of transferring your cargo. You tip the bucket slowly, letting it slop into the pit below with a splash that makes Faustus wince, and one of his assistants gag theatrically. Amateurs, you mutter. You hand over a small wax tablet with the weight tally scratched in with a stylus. Faustus squints at it, then gestures to his assistant, who hauls over a set of scales. The stench intensifies as they measure the load. Even in the open air, it wraps around your head like a thick wool blanket soaked in vinegar. You try to breathe shallowly, which only half works. Your eyes water a little. Faustus, somehow unaffected, scratches his ear and says, "Decent haul. You shorted us last week, though." You frown. That was a bad batch. Too much water in the pipes. "Sure," he says with a grin. "Or you're just getting lazy." You lean on your paddle. Lazy people don't haul urine uphill. He chuckles and the tension breaks. He waves to one of his workers, who tosses you a small purse of coins. It jingles nicely, though not as nicely as you like. You open it and count silently, short by half a denarius. Faustus, he shrugs. Lime powder's gone up. Tied up my margins. Funny, the perfume shop said the same thing. Historians still argue whether Roman tradesmen manipulated prices regularly or whether inflation hit everyone equally. You've lived long enough to know the truth. If you can exploit someone, you probably will, especially if they smell like their job. Still, there's only so much you can do. You pocket the pouch and nod. Next time, I'm charging for aroma. You should be charging for distance, he jokes. You're hauling from Aventine to Tiber. That's practically a pilgrimage. You chuckle, though your lower back is already filing a complaint. As you pull your cart away, you glance at the workers soaking hides in a vat of pungent brew. Most people don't realize that urine is a key ingredient in leather tanning. It softens the hides, helps remove hair, and preps them for dye. Your job, disgusting as it may be, literally makes Roman sandals walk in togas billow. You catch a young apprentice, barely 10, staring at you from behind a stack of salted hides. His face is a perfect mix of awe and horror. "Is it true," he calls, "that you once found a snake in a latrine?" You smirk. "I think it was a snake. Could have been a senator's leftover wig." He gasps and giggles. Another myth born. You pass by the dye vats, brilliant bowls of indigo, crimson, and a particularly lurid green, and inhale cautiously beneath the eye-watering chemicals. There's a strange, almost comforting scent of industry, like the city exhaling. A woman at one vat gives you a nod as you walk past. You nod back, mutual respect. She dies. You supply. No illusions between you. As you make your way back into the city proper, your cart noticeably lighter, you allow yourself a brief moment of satisfaction. You've turned today's muck into money. Not much, but enough. Enough for grain. Maybe a plum. Maybe even a beer, if the tavern by the aqueduct hasn't blacklisted you again. The mule plods along, visibly happier to shed the bulk of the burden. You pat his flank, grateful for the company, even if he smells only marginally better than the cart. You pass under a triumphal arch, shadow falling over you like the city's reluctant blessing. Above you, carved in marble, are images of victorious generals, God smiling down, and great deeds immortalized in stone. No sign of the guy who hauls the empire's excrement. But you see the connection, whether they do or not. All those conquests, all that glory, none of it would last long without someone to clean the latrines. Poop makes the world go round. In Rome, it also makes it profitable. You're halfway through your route now, with just enough time to make a trip to the Cloaca Maxima before lunch. Just enough time to stare into the literal and metaphorical bowels of the city, and maybe splash a little water on your face, assuming there's any part of your face that still counts as clean. There it is, the great, gurgling jugular of Rome, the Cloaca Maxima. You steer your now emptied cart along the embankment road, hooves clacking, wheels groaning, until the giant mouth of the city's ancient sewer system comes into view. You've been here 100 times, and it still manages to impress you, not in a romantic, awe-of-architecture way. No, you've stepped in too many mystery puddles for that. But there's something about the sheer size of it, the knowledge that under the marble streets and grand columns, a steady river of Rome's runoff snakes silently beneath. It humbles a person, smells like civic pride. You mutter as you tie the mule to a rail and approach the edge. Steam rises from the arched opening, blending with the early afternoon haze. Inside, the tunnel is dark, damp, and wide enough to float a small boat, which, for the record, has been done. Some madman named Antyllus once held a drinking contest on a raft in there. Didn't end well. Too many fumes. Too much wine. Too little judgment. You don't go inside. That a different job. One for the real sewer workers. The poor souls who wade knee-deep in the empire's digestive guilt. You just skim the edges. Still, you squat near one of the runoff channels and peek in. The stream bubbles lazily, carry with it the remains of breakfast, bath water, dye runoff, and probably a few secrets. A pair of sandals float past. Unclaimed. You make a note of the location. Someone might want those back, or at least pay you say you didn't see them. You reach into your pouch and pull out a small offering, half a dried fig, and toss it in. A little superstition. You never come here without feeding the tunnel. Call it respect. Call it fear. Whatever keeps the cloaca from belching up something with too many teeth. Historians still argue whether the Cloaca Maxima was truly as efficient as ancient sources claimed. Was it a marvel of urban engineering, or an overhyped ditch with good PR? Doesn't really matter. You've seen it carry away storms and back up like a toddler with too much cheese. It's a gamble every day. A voice breaks your thoughts. You talk into the drain again. You glance up and spot Gaius. Yes, that Gaius. The philosophizing layabout from the latrine district. He's carrying a chicken under one arm and a grin that suggests both are stolen. Just showing some respect. You say, standing. To a sewer? It's earned it. He shrugs, then squints at the tunnel. You ever wonder where it all goes? You nod toward the Tiber, downstream, to the next unlucky village. Rome's version of a gift. You both share a chuckle. Gaius sits on a low stone and releases a chicken, which clucks unbothered. He produces a small scroll and begins to scribble something on the back. Poem. Observation, he says. About you. The humble Dung man kneels before the sewer mouth, his reflection murky, his wisdom clearer still. You raise an eyebrow. Not bad. Bit dramatic. Everything's dramatic when it's written on stolen parchment. You laugh, shake your head, and begin checking the straps on your cart. Where you off to next? He asks, tucking the scroll away. Quick lunch. Then the East Side Circuit. Sabura. He whistles. Brave man. You smirk. Or stupid. Depends on who you ask. You leave Gaius behind with his chicken and continue along the edge of the cloaca, past inspection grates and half-buried side tunnels. Some are dry. Some aren't. One has a distinct gurgle that makes you speed up your step. It's not just waste that moves through these tunnels. Stories do too. People disappear down here sometimes. Smugglers. Lovers. Once, a disgraced senator was rumored to have lived in the dry section for 3 weeks, eating nothing but stolen figs and regrets. You never found him, just the regrets. At one side alcove, you spot a city engineer muttering to himself and tapping the wall with a bronze rod. He doesn't even look at you. You don't look at him. Mutual acknowledgement without interaction. The Roman way. You finally reach a public fountain near the Forum district, just far enough from the sewer mouth that the water is technically potable, assuming you're feeling optimistic. You let the mule drink first. Then you splash a little on your face. Cold, sharp, exactly what you need to reset your senses. You take a moment here. Lean against the stone rim. Breathe in, less awful than 5 minutes ago. The city has shifted into its afternoon rhythm. Vendors shout more loudly. Children run more freely. And the sun lingers in that spot where it heats your back but doesn't bake your brain. You bite into the plum you bought earlier. It's overripe and sticky and you don't care. Because despite everything, the smell, the stares, the fact that you stepped in 3 different substances today, you feel useful. You remember what one old man once told you at a funeral. The city doesn't run on heroes. It runs on people who show up. And here you are, still showing up, still hauling the unmentionables, still keeping the eternal city from becoming an eternal mess. You wipe your hands, mount the cart again, and point the mule towards Sabura, which is, quite frankly, going to be chaos, and possibly bandits. But that's a problem for future you. Sabura is the kind of neighborhood that makes your mule nervous. Even at the best of times, this packed, noisy district buzzes with a kind of unfiltered Roman energy, equal parts street performance and petty crime. It's where the insolently lean just a little too far over the street, where every alley smells like it's seen some things, and where the concept of personal space was clearly vetoed by a crowd. You turn onto one of Sabura's narrower arteries, dodging a man carrying 3 chickens under each arm and a child dragging a wheel-less toy chariot with tremendous authority. Above you, laundry flutters from 4th-floor windows like surrender flags. Somewhere to your left, someone is singing about olives. Badly. This is the working-class heart of Rome. Here, people shout through walls, barter in 4 languages, and use the term fresh water loosely. Sabura may be loud, crammed, and questionably constructed, but it pulses with life. And also latrines. Lots of them. You guide your cart into a small courtyard where a tenement block wraps around 3 sides. The communal toilet is at the center, more pit than structure, shielded only by a crooked wooden fence and a prayer. Back again. Calls a familiar voice from a 2nd-story window. You look up to see Kasia, leaning on the sill with a bowl of lentils and a smirk. Her hair is tied up with what might be part of a toga, and she has that permanently amused look of someone who has seen far too much to be surprised by anything anymore. Afraid, so you call back. Your building keeps producing record-breaking contributions. It's the lentils, she says, lifting her bowl. Fuel of champions. You laugh and get to work. This particular latrine is notoriously temperamental. It was poorly dug, with a drainage trench that seemed to slope the wrong way, something you discovered the hard way during last year's August heat wave. You approach with caution, peering into the opening like it might bite. Someone's thrown in what appears to be a sandal. You fish it out with your paddle and place it respectfully to the side. You've learned not to ask. The waste is thick today, possibly due to a neighborhood festival tonight, before involving spicy sausages and free wine. You steel yourself, lower the bucket, and begin scooping. It's moments like this that really define your career. A few curious children gather to watch. One points and asks, "Is that a fish?" "It was," you say, peering closer. "Now it's an ex-fish." They giggle and run off to tell someone that the poop man found a fish. Another neighbor emerges with a broom, sweeping the stones half-heartedly. She sniffs the air, makes a face, and says, "You're late." You glance at the sky. 2 hours early, actually. She squints. It feels later. You offer a shrug that says, "Time to construct," and keep scooping. A half-eaten fig falls from a window and nearly lands in your bucket. You glance up just in time to see a sheepish hand withdraw. Sabura offers surprises at every altitude. Historians still argue whether tenement dwellers in neighborhoods like Sabura had reliable access to sanitation. Some suggest a communal system. Others think people simply dumped waste out the window. You, having witnessed both in action, suspect the truth is yes. Once the pit is cleared, you sprinkle an ash and lime from a small pouch tied to your belt. It bubbles slightly on contact, a smell like hot vinegar and burnt toast rising into your sinuses. You've grown weirdly fond of it. Cash's voice floats down again. "You want some lentils?" You look underfed. You glance at your tunic, which has been dyed by exposure to 5 different bodily fluids today. "I'm good, thanks." She laughs. "Suit yourself. You ever think of quitting?" You pause. "Every day. And then I remember that senators still poop, and they still need me to clean it up." "A true Roman hero," she says, raising her bowl. You give a little bow, paddle in hand. You make your way out of the courtyard, bucket sloshing ominously. The cart groans as you lift it back into place. The mule gives you a look. You give it right back. Next stop is the butcher's alley, where a small side street latrine gets overwhelmed regularly by customers with weak stomachs. You once had to drag a half-digested sausage out of that one. It had teeth marks. You steer through the narrow roads with practiced ease, avoiding a group of boys playing dice and a drunk sleeping on a doormat. The air here is even thicker. Cloves, garlic, and meat overlaid with the musty sweetness of rot. You park beside the latrine and brace yourself. Inside, it's worse than expected. A pile is formed right next to the actual seat, as though someone either missed or panicked. You mutter a string of curses under your breath, none too crude, just creatively annoyed. You scoop it all up, clean around the edges, and make a mental note. Bring extra lime next time. By now, your arms are aching, not just tired, sore. You've been hauling and lifting and crouching for hours. Your lower back hums a slow, bitter tune. But your cart is nearly full again. The Sabura run is always a lot. It's dense. It's wild. It never smells the same twice. And yet, you know every crack in the cobblestones here, every gossip's window perch, every guard who'll look the other way if you need to dump quickly behind the bakery. Sabura may be chaotic, but it's familiar. You pass a shrine to Laura's, the guardian spirits of the neighborhood. Someone's left an offering, bread, flowers, a tiny wax figure shaped like a fish. You bow slightly as you pass. Keep the pipes flowing. The sun has begun its descent now, the light taking on that golden, sleepy hue. You got a few more pickups ahead. And then, a rinse, a crust of bread, a stretch of silence, if you're lucky. But first, one final sprint through Rome's messiest neighborhood. You tighten your grip on the reins. Sabura isn't done with you yet. As you trudge away from Sabura, trailing the distinctive aroma of civic devotion behind you, your mind wanders to many, Many uses Romans have found for the very cargo you collect. It's one thing to haul human waste. It's quite another to realize that nearly half the city's industries depend on the stuff in your cart. You've often joked with fellow collectors that you should start calling yourselves organic suppliers instead of dung haulers. Has a certain ring to it. Could almost get you invited to a merchant's dinner. Almost. The most obvious use, of course, is tanning leather. Tanners love your deliveries. Well, not you exactly, but what you provide. Urine softens hides and helps strip hair from skin. Without your buckets, Rome's soldiers will be barefoot, and its senators naked from the belt down. Not a thought anyone wants to linger on. You've also sold to the fullers the obsessive toga washers. These folks soak garments in a blend of urine, clay, and soap root, then stomp them clean with their feet in vats. You've seen it done. Lines of grim-faced workers rhythmically squishing ancient stains underfoot, like a very unfortunate grape harvest. The smell in fuller workshops is somewhere between vinegar and vengeance. And then there's the dye houses. They're your more high-maintenance clients. The ammonia in urine helps fix colors in the fabric, especially those brilliant imperial purples and deep blues the aristocrats love. You once overheard a dyer shout, "Bring me the rich man's bucket. It smells more refined." You're not sure if he was joking. You hope he was joking. But your favorite story comes from an older collector named Lartius. He claimed that a physician once bought an entire day's load from him, not for laundry or leather, but for medicine. Apparently, some Roman doctors, those with more scrolls and sense, believe aged urine can treat wounds, skin rashes, even sore throats. Nature's antiseptic, they call it. Lartius swore he saw a surgeon swab someone's knee with what had come from a bathhouse drain. You haven't eaten lentils since. Historians still argue whether those medicinal uses were widespread or fringe practices of particularly optimistic quacks. All you know is that you now flinch every time someone offers you homemade remedies. You make your next stop near a fuller's shop tucked between a shrine to Bacchus and a wine cellar who waters down his product so much it qualifies as soup. The fuller, an excitable man named Tertius, comes bustling out as soon as your mule rounds a corner. "You're early," he calls, wiping his hands on a tunic already dyed pale yellow. Or "You're late," you reply, hopping down from the cart. He sniffs the air and gives you a satisfied nod. "Nice bouquet today." Hints of lentil, with a sharp vinegar top note. You stare at him. "I read a scroll about wine tasting," he says with a shrug, trying to elevate the discourse. You unload 3 bucketfuls into his storage cistern. He hums as he watches, taking notes on a wax tablet. Some fullers have begun tracking the flavor profiles of their deliveries. You suspect they're just bored. As you finish pouring, Tertius leans in. "Did you hear? There's a woman near the Circus Maximus using urine to whiten her teeth." You blink. "You're making that up." "No, truly." Says it's imported Spanish urine, very refined. Cleans the enamel, breath like Elysium. You raise an eyebrow. "Imported, huh?" "Oh, yes. Domestic just won't do. Too acidic." You try to imagine the sales pitch. Whiter teeth in 5 applications, just swish and pray. Romans, you've learned, will use anything for something, given enough confidence in a scroll to back it up. Tertius pays you promptly. 2 denarii and a small pot of ash paste for personal hygiene. You accept both and make your exit before he starts offering samples. Your next stop is a laundry pit run by a pair of twin sisters who barely speak, but always pay on time. Their guard dog growls at you half-heartedly before returning to Sunbeam. They take 2 buckets, leave you a small loaf of barley bread as thanks, and vanish back into their steaming workshop. You appreciate their efficiency. No poetry, no analysis. Just stink to silver. By now, your cart is growing heavy again. Not with waste this time, but with empty buckets, coin pouches, and small gift from grateful tradesfolk. It's not glamorous, but it's steady work. Rome has a bottomless appetite for odd uses of human runoff. You start thinking about the really weird uses you've heard about. A painter once told you he mixed a dash of urine into his plaster to give frescoes a living warmth. A priest claimed it kept bad spirits from settling in doorways. And a street magician? He sprinkled it on dice for luck. You're still not sure if that was part of the trick, or just a misunderstanding. As you guide your cart toward your final delivery, a boy chases you down the street, waving a scroll. Wait, wait, are you the poop merchant? You sigh. Close enough. He catches up, panting, and hands you a sealed note from a brothel near the docks. They say it's urgent. You open the scroll and skim the hasty Latin. It's barely legible, written by someone either very excited or very distracted. Need a night pickup. Drains backing up. Payment in coin and wine. You sigh. Always the brothel. Always the last request of the day. The boy grins. They said to hurry. You look at the sun, sliding ever lower. Your body aches. Your stomach grumbles. Your cart stinks. But the coin is good, and you did promise. You flick the reins. The mule groans. Onward, once more. The road to the docks is a long, rattling trek, especially with a tired mule, a creaky cart, and the subtle but ever-present threat of stepping in something regrettable. The closer you get to the Tiber's edge, the louder everything becomes. Merchants yelling about eels, sailors arguing over jugs of water wine, and the metallic rhythm of ropes, pulleys, and cargo slamming onto stone. You guide your mule through it all with practiced calm, weaving around baskets of rotting dates, and a sleeping sailor using a fish net as a blanket. You've been down this way plenty of times, usually at dusk, when the sun bounces gold off the river and the smells shift from earthy to briny to, why is that eel looking at me like that? Eventually, you reach the brothel. It's a 2-story house painted a color that might once have been cheerful. Now it's mostly faded to tired tomato. The entrance is flanked by a pair of broken statues, one of Venus, the other a goat. No one knows why the goat is there. No one asks. You knock once, loudly. A moment later, the door swings open and you're greeted by Priska, the establishment's owner, financier, and chief enforcer. She's tall, middle-aged, and gives off the kind of calm that makes you feel like you're already in trouble. Took you long enough, she says, though not unkindly. Tell your boy not to call me the poop merchant next time. She snorts. That was for my own amusement. You glance inside. It's quiet. Too early for business. Too late for breakfast. One of the girls is mopping the floor in slow circles. Another lounges on a chaise, chewing dried apricots and reading a scroll upside down. Priska waves you toward the back. Latrine's clogged. Again, if I have to listen to one more girl shriek about ankle-deep blessings, I'm raising rates. You nod and follow her through a hallway that smells faintly of perfume and tired sandals. The latrine is tucked behind the kitchen, cleverly hidden by a curtain and a painted vase that no one ever dusts. You pull back the curtain and are immediately greeted by the warm, sour scent of a pipe that has not been draining properly for quite some time. Impressive, you mutter, crouching low, you've dealt with worse. Once, during a Saturnalia party gone wrong, you had to unclog an entire bathhouse drain, using nothing but a bent ladle and an old prayer. This is a Wednesday. You begin the careful process of removing the blockage, scooping slowly to avoid overflow. The waste is thick, with a layer of something pale and mushy floating near the surface. Bread paste. Priska offers from behind you. They've been flushing food again. You sigh. Why? They think it carries away bad dreams, or ex-lovers. Historians still argue whether such superstitions were widespread or localized to certain districts. You suspect it's a combination of desperation and poetry. As you work, a rat watches from the shadows with an expression of bored disapproval. You nod at it. It blinks. You feel understood. It takes about 20 minutes to clear the blockage, and another 10 to scoop out the worst of it. When you finish, you sprinkle ash and a dash of mint vinegar. Priska insists on the mint, and wipe your hands on a rag that's doing its best. Priska hands you a small purse of coins and a jug of dark red wine. Don't drink it all at once, she warns. It's strong enough to clean floors if you're desperate. You tip your head in thanks and tuck both into your cart. Same time next week, she asks. If the gods will it, and your drains won't. She smirks and retreats back inside. You take a moment to rest in the alley beside the brothel. The light has shifted. Longer shadows now. Cooler breezes drifting off the river. You close your eyes, letting the day settle on your bones. A group of dock workers pass by, carrying amphory and singing a song about a sailor, a storm, and a goat that saved his ship. One of them wrinkles his nose as he nears your cart. Smells like fortune, you say. He laughs. Then may Jupiter bless your fortune, bucket man. You raise a hand in mock salute. Your cart is almost full again. The mule sighs dramatically, clearly aware the workday isn't quite over yet. You start rolling again, heading for the last stretch of your afternoon route. A loop through some alley latrines behind a row of tenement bakeries. Always warm, always questionable. As you move, you reflect on just how integrated your profession is into Roman life. People curse your stench but need your haul. They wrinkle their noses but pay your coin. You're a contradiction they tolerate but won't name. You once overheard a philosopher declare that dung collectors were necessary shadows in the bright theater of the empire. He was drunk and definitely stealing figs, but you appreciated the poetry. It's true in a way. You exist in the margins, not honored, not celebrated, but necessary. Rome runs on aqueducts, yes, but it also runs on what you carry away. You take the long route back toward the alleys, passing beneath crumbling balconies and tight corners where stray cats rule like minor deities. You nod to a boy hauling a sack of flour twice the size. He nods back, respectful of anyone moving something that smells worse than a fish market at noon. Soon, you'll clean out the last few pits, rinse off at a public fountain, and limp back home with a pocket full of coins, 2 sore shoulders, and a scent that lingers longer than regret. But for now, there's still work, still buckets to fill, still Rome to keep clean. The alleys near the bakeries are narrower than ever, and with the sun slanting low, shadows stretch across the paving stones like sleepy cats. Your cart barely squeezes through. One wheel knocks against a wine jug someone left outside a window, fortunately empty, or at least not full of anything worth drinking. You're heading into your last circuit of the day, and the mule knows it. He perks up just slightly, as if smelling the faint, blessed scent of rest. You pat his side. Not yet, old friend. A few more scoops. Then we can both collapse in peace. The alley latrines here aren't official. They're not even really latrines, just cleverly disguised pits dug behind workshops, shielded by crates and weak excuses. The bakeries use them when the lines at the proper facilities are too long, or when the dough just really can't wait. You come to your first one and sigh. It's behind a bakery known for spiced honey rolls and, unfortunately, also for its employees' complete disregard for waste etiquette. The pit is a hole surrounded by crumbling bricks and a half-rotted curtain someone nailed to a beam. You've been here before. Many times. Each time, you lose a little more faith in humanity. You squat, assess, and get to work. It's a mess, of course. Half solid, half questionable, and reeking with the sharp tang of undercooked barley in haste. The bucket fills quickly, the scoop work now muscle memory. Behind you, someone clears their throat. You glance up. 3 young men stand there, barefoot, arms crossed, with the kind of expressions that say, "We've decided you're an easy mark." One steps forward, clearly the leader. He's wiry, with the twitchy energy of someone who gets bored way too easily. "That's a heavy cart, friend," he says casually. "Looks valuable." You glance at the bucket, now brimming with a sloshy mix that defies description. You smile slowly. "Extremely valuable," you say. "Top shelf stuff. I'm making a delivery to the temple of Cloacina herself." He frowns. "Cloacina? Goddess of the sewers." You explain. She demands tribute. You boys want to help carry it. They hesitate. One of them leans closer to look inside your cart. His eyes water instantly. "By the gods, what is that?" "Breakfast, lunch, and regret." The leader recoils. "Are you serious?" You step forward, paddle in hand, and say in a voice just a bit too cheerful, "You're welcome to take the cart, but if you spill any of it, you carry it in your tunic." They stare at you, then at the cart, then at each other. Eventually, they retreat with mumbled excuses about being needed elsewhere. As they vanish, you call after them, Tell your mothers they raise wise cowards. There's a moment of silence. Then you hear laughter, yours, echoing down the alley, rough and a little mad from the day. You finish scooping the pit and tossing the last of your lime powder. The smell sharpens to something citrusy and slightly burnt, still unpleasant, but less likely to offend the neighborhood gods. A few more stops, quieter ones now. A butcher's assistant hands you a bucket of awful runoff you weren't expecting. Consider it a bonus, he says. You accept it with a nod, already regretting it as the smell sinks into your nostrils like an unwanted poem. You pause at a corner fountain, splash water on your hands, and scare away a pigeon who had claimed the rim like it paid rent. The sun has now dropped behind the taller buildings, casting everything in a rich, smoky orange. You think you're done. You really do. And then you hear it. Excuse me, you there, collector. You turn slowly. An older man hobbles toward you from the side street, clutching a cane in one hand and a chamber pot in the other. The pot is full, and sloshing, and steaming. My daughter's husband, the old man wheezes. He hasn't cleared a latrine in 3 days. We have guests coming. Important ones. From Ostia. You blink. Sir, I'm at capacity. Literally. He jabs his cane at your mule. Then come back. You young people, always rushing off with your buckets full, and your hearts empty. You consider the man. You consider your cart. You consider your poor mule, who has now turned his head to give you a look that reads, "Don't you dare." Tomorrow, you say gently, at dawn, first stop, I promise. The old man grumbles, mutters something about Cloacina's laziness, and vanishes into his doorway like a ghost made of vinegar and disapproval. You resume your route, winding back toward home now, cart groaning under the weight of a day's labor. You pass the temple of Castor and Pollux, where a priest is lighting lamps. A dog barks. Someone sings off-key. Rome is winding down, but only slightly. You think again about that gang of alley thieves. It's not the first time you've been approached. Once, a drunk tried to mug you with a spoon. You offered him a complimentary scoop. He ran faster than Mercury. Historians still debate how dangerous the Roman streets were at night, whether violence was common or sensationalized by moralists with too much parchment. You've seen both sides. But you've also learned very few people want to fight a dung collector, especially one holding a full bucket. As you reach the last alley, you realize something. You haven't spilled a single drop today. No accidents, no leaks, no disasters. You pause, look up at the fading sky, and whisper, "Thank you, Cloacina." The mule snorts. You nod in agreement. "All right," you say, "let's go home." Home isn't grand. It's not even particularly well built, but it's yours, or at least the top back corner of someone else's insula is. After weaving through Rome's evening crowd, thinning now but still noisy, you and your mule reach the courtyard of your building. The structure leans ever so slightly westward, as if perpetually bowing to the nearest temple. Laundry flaps in the breeze. Children chase one another up cracked stairs, and someone's grandmother is shouting about figs again. All is as it should be. You park the cart in its usual nook beside the outer wall, wedged between an old wine barrel and a disused ladder. The mule sighs like a gladiator dropping his shield. You stroke his side. Go on, rest. You earned it. He trots. Well, limps with dignity toward the feeding trough and begins munching on a pile of wilted greens someone kindly dumped there. You suspect the stable boy, a lanky teen with a soft spot for underappreciated animals. You grab the empty buckets, now just lightly crusted with the ghost of the day's labor, and hoist them over one shoulder. Your paddle rests in the other hand like a staff, or maybe a very weary wand. Up the stairs you go, stone-worn smooth in the center, the occasional creak announcing your climb. You pass a door from which comes the unmistakable smell of chickpea stew, and hear a loud argument about whether geese can sense earthquakes. It's a new one, even for this place. Finally, you reach your level. The walkway sways just slightly underfoot. Your door is marked with a faded glyph of Fortuna, part superstition, part poor attempt at interior design. You duck inside. Your room is modest. A cot, A crate that moonlights as a table, a chipped oil lamp, and a stool that wobbles in a way that keeps you alert. But it's quiet and dry. Usually, you drop the buckets with clatter, stretch your aching arms, and let out a groan that echoes faintly off the stone. That's the kind of sound that tells you you've earned sleep. But first, the rinse ritual. You grab a spare tunic, coarse, cleaner, only mildly perfumed with failure, and head back out to the nearest public fountain. A 2-minute walk that feels like an odyssey at this hour. The fountain is simple, carved from limestone, decorated with a modest relief of Neptune looking mildly surprised. Water trickles from a spout shaped like a lion's mouth. Someone's left a half-eaten apple on the edge. You eye it. No, not again. You strip off your outer layer and rinse your arms, legs, neck. The water is cold. Sharply so. You hiss through your teeth and scrub harder. Try not to think about how many other hands and feet have visited this basin today. Still, it's better than going to bed with a patina of Rome's collective digestive output clinging to you. You splash your face, scrub behind your ears, and finally tip your head under the stream. The water runs down your back, chasing the heat and stink away. You exhale from the edge of the fountain. A pigeon glares at you like it owns the place. I pay taxes, you inform it. It blinks once, unimpressed. You wring out your tunic, shiver a little, and slip into your spare one. Faded brown, aggressively boring. Perfect. As you head back to your room, freshly chilled and slightly pruny, you reflect on your day. You've hauled filth from marble villas and street corners, fought off thieves with a paddle, negotiated with tanners, dodged insults, survived Sabura, and kept your buckets upright through every curve and stumble. You've earned whatever rest is coming. You pass by Lucia, your upstairs neighbor and self-declared prophetess, who's lighting candles on her windowsill. Anything in the stars tonight? You ask. She squints upward. Mars is angry, but Venus is distracted. Be careful with women. You chuckle. I'll try. Back in your room. You flop onto the cot, bones groaning like the hinges on an old temple gate. You blow out the lamp and lie in the dark, letting your body sink deep into the straw-stuffed mattress. Somewhere outside, a dog barks. Someone sings. A pot crashes. Rome doesn't sleep. Not really, but you do. You close your eyes. One more day done. One more day survived. You're almost ready to drift off, body aching in that deeply satisfying, day well spent kind of way, when there's a knock at the door. Not a loud knock, just 3 soft taps. Hesitant, almost apologetic, you groan, roll off the cot, and creak your way to the door. When you open it, the hallway is empty, except for a young boy standing there, barefoot and breathless, holding a tightly rolled scroll. He thrusts it out toward you with the urgency of someone who does not want to be the messenger for this errand. From Madame Flavia's, the other brothel. Of course, you take the scroll and unroll it. Scrawled in haste is a short note. Pipe blocked. Smell bad. Coin ready. Come fast. Not the most elegant Latin, but it gets the point across. You rub your temples. The kid is still there. She said if you don't come now, she'll find someone else. Someone with a nicer card. You sigh. Tell her I'm on my way. The boy sprints off, relieved, possibly hoping to avoid the stink radius. You throw your outer tunic back on, grab your paddle, again, and trudge down the stairs with the weight of someone who has absolutely done this before. The mule snorts awake as you approach. I know, you say. I thought we were done too. You hitch the cart, climb aboard, and roll once more into the night. The streets are mostly quiet now. The wine cellars are closed. The last round of shouting lovers has gone hoarse. The flickering lamps cast long shadows across the stones. You pass a few guards, a beggar snoring on a temple step, and a cat perched like a sentinel near a bakery door. Madame Flavia's establishment is less refined than Prisca's. Less scented oils, more patchy curtains. You knock once. The door creaks open before your knuckles land again. The madam herself stands there, tall, sharp, wrapped in silk that's doing its best. She doesn't smile. Took you long enough, she says, already turning away. You follow her through a cramped entryway. Inside, the air is dense with incense and desperation. A lute lies abandoned on a stool. A man snores on a couch. No one looks at you. The latrine is at the back. Surprise, surprise, and it's exactly what you expected. A shallow pit, clogged, bubbling faintly like it's trying to speak in burps. Someone stuffed a handful of flower petals into it, perhaps hoping that would fix things. It didn't. You crouch, paddle in hand, and get to work. Madame Flavia stands nearby, arms crossed. One of the girls tried to use sand. She offers. You glance at the pit. She used what? To soak it up like in the stables. You sigh. This is not a stable. This is a cautionary tale. You scoop slowly, carefully. The waist is still warm. It resists, thick and reluctant. You mutter under your breath. Nothing crude, just the kind of phrases that feel good to say when your nostrils are under siege. Finally, the worst is cleared. You toss in a generous handful of mint-laced ash and stand. Should hold until morning, you say. Maybe tell the girls not to use flower petals. Or sand. Flavia nods, already distracted. She hands you a small pouch of coins, heavier than expected. For your trouble, she says, then adds, you're the only one who shows up when we call. That matters. You gnawed once. It's what I do. Back outside, the mule grumbles but doesn't resist. He knows the way home by now. You ride in silence, letting the city wash over you. Rome at night is a different creature. Slower, dreamier, with the smells softened and the stones cool beneath your cartwheels. A breeze kicks up, stirring the edges of togas on laundry lines and carrying the faintest scent of roasted onions from somewhere far off. You finally reach your street. The mule stops without prompting. You dismount, unhitch the cart, and stroke his neck. Now, you say, now we're done. He leans against you, just slightly. You clean the paddle one final time at the fountain, splash a bit of water on your face, and climb the stairs back to your room. Again, your bones ache, your muscles throb, and your eyelids feel like they've been dipped in lead. You collapse into your cot. Not neatly, not gracefully, just fully. The oil lamp flickers. A pigeon coos outside. Someone is humming a lullaby you don't recognize. And at last, at long, glorious last, there is nothing else to scoop, to carry, to clean, or to fix. Only this. Stillness. Soreness. Sleep. You close your eyes. And this time, the city lets you drift. The streets of Rome are quiet now. The carts have stopped rolling. The bathhouses have gone still. The fountains burble softly, gently polishing the coins tossed in earlier by hopeful hands. Somewhere, a lamplighter finishes his last wick, and a child murmurs in their sleep. The city's rhythm slows, not gone, just softened like the lull between waves. Even the dogs are curled into corners, paws twitching as they chase dream hares through alleyways. And you, bone-weary, bucket empty, you lie on your straw cot, wrapped in silence. The scent of the day still lingers faintly on your skin, earthy and oddly familiar. You're used to it by now. It's the price of being needed, of doing the job no one else wants, but everyone relies on. You've walked every kind of street today, from the polished paths of senators to the forgotten gutters of Subura. You've scooped, bartered, rinsed, and survived. No scrolls will record your name. No statue will bear your likeness. And yet, you are the quiet architecture beneath the city's greatness. So let your limbs grow heavy. Let your breath deepen. The worst of the day is behind you. What remains is only the slow turning of time and the hush of a world briefly at peace. Tomorrow will come, with its smells and sounds and stubborn drains. But tonight, it's enough to rest, to be still, to know you did what needed doing, and to let sleep gather you up like the gentle tide it is. Good night, collector. Rome can wait.